The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Prisym ID's webinar, The Compliance Crackdown, Guarding Against FDA Action. My name's Claire Uzzell and I'll be your webinar host today. We're expecting the presentation to last about 40 minutes, followed by a question and answer session. Please note that we will be muting telephone lines during the webinar except for the speakers, so if you have any questions, please submit them using the question tool on screen. We'll be collating all the questions at the end and we'll look to answer as many as possible. We'll also be providing a written response to delegates of all the questions received during the webinar. Following the presentation, we'll be posting a copy of the audio and video from this session onto the Prisym ID website, and we'll notify all registered attendees when it's available. During today's webinar, we hope that you'll be able to learn what it means to be FDA 21 CFR Part 11 compliant, gain awareness of the most common compliance pitfalls and how to avoid them, discover how software can aid your business when designing, producing and managing labels, understand how costs can be reduced while gaining and maintaining strict compliance, global regulations and standards, followed by a question and answer session. Today we have two specialist speakers, Andrew McLaughlin and Ray Collier-Suzuki. Andrew McLaughlin has been a life sciences project manager for 8 years. He's been involved in many large system deliveries and has the ability to direct complex projects from concept to implementation. He has delivered multiple million-dollar, multi-regional medical device labeling projects. Ray Collier-Suzuki is Prisym ID's System Sales Manager and has over 24 years sales and consultancy experience. His specialist area of expertise includes delivering solutions which provide optimization, efficiency, integration and compliance at both local and global level. So without too much further ado, let me hand you over to Andy.
Thank you, Claire, and hello everyone. Welcome again to the webinar. We'll be talking through 21 CFR Part 11, talking about the compliance, the regulations, and how software can help you to meet and adhere to the regulations. Before we start, let's officially introduce Part 11, or to give the full name, Food and Drug Administration, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 11, Electronic Records, Electronic Signatures. What is 21 CFR Part 11? These are guidelines on the use of electronic records and electronic signatures for companies operating in the life sciences arena, and also either manufacturing in the United States or for overseas companies wishing to import goods into the United States. Some more detail, it defines the criteria under which electronic records and electronic signatures are considered to be trustworthy, reliable, and the key phrase, generally equivalent to paper records and handwritten signatures. A quote from FDA guidance notes, Part 11 applies to records in electronic form that are created, modified, maintained, archived, retrieved, or transmitted under any records requirements set forth in agency regulations. Another key point, the relevant records as well as the supporting documentation for the systems must be available for inspection by the FDA. Practically speaking, 21 CFR Part 11 requires the implementation of controls, including audits, validation, and documentation for software and systems involved in the processing of data. What do the regulations actually cover? Required records that are maintained in electronic format in place of paper format, required records that are maintained in electronic format in addition to paper format and that are relied on to perform regulated activities, records submitted to FDA in electronic format, and electronic signatures that are intended to be equivalent of handwritten signatures. Some specific points from the regulations. Signatures need to be two-part. That's username and password. Relevant validation documentation needs to be in place. Labels and data need to be strictly version controlled. Relevant SOPs need to be in place. The audit history of actions needs to be maintained and secure. And actions within the system must be permission-based. The regulations apply to any company in the life sciences arena. That means drug or pharmaceutical manufacturers, medical device manufacturers, biotech, biological, clinical, contract research organizations, and other FDA-regulated industries. It applies to all aspects of the research, clinical study, maintenance, manufacturing, and distribution of medical products. These organizations need to implement controls for software and systems involved in processing electronic data, including quality audits, system validations, audit trails, electronic signatures, and documentation. Moving on to the top 5 areas organizations fall short when audited. Using software that is non-compliant to 21 CFR Part 11. Using software which is non-compliant to the specific Quality Systems Regulation 21 CFR Part 820, in effect not adhering to current food manufacturing processes. Labeling SOPs are not documented or not followed correctly. No traceability in the event of a product recall. And lastly, the labeling system does not meet the needs of the FDA and GMP, and/or it cannot be made to meet these requirements. Looking at the key required features to make a solution both validated and compliant, bearing in mind it's not just the software on its own. You need to ensure the software was written and tested using a documented and recognized lifecycle-based QA procedure. The software automatically generates complete and accurate records of every critical action performed within the system. Records are stored in a way to ensure accurate and speedy retrieval. Records are protected against unauthorized input, deletion, or modification of data. And the software installation is executed by following a pre-approved installation validation plan, in effect IQOQ-PQ, or installation, operational, and performance qualification, supported by the reports of those scripts. Top things to remember: is the software that you are using fit for purpose for life sciences labeling requirements, specifically 21 CFR Part 11? In the event of a product recall or FDA audit, are you able to supply an audit log going back 5 years, and can you provide this to an auditor in a reasonable amount of time? Does your software have full lifecycle documentation? And lastly, was your software installed as part of a validation exercise? The scary alternative. If you don't follow all of these regulations, it can result in the very unpleasant event of receiving an FDA warning letter. This can lead to significant disruption both in operational and commercial impact to your business, or insistence from the FDA on a return to the old-fashioned paper-based systems. Now looking to a more positive story, where a customer needed to meet the FDA as well as EU and MHRA regulations because they were trying to ship product from the UK and Europe to the US. They came to Prisym ID asking for a very speedy turnaround in terms of delivering a fully 21 CFR Part 11 compliant solution. We delivered an off-the-shelf solution that interfaced using a core product module that then interfaced with their business systems. We delivered in the timescales, actually ahead of the timescales that they laid out in their requirements, and they're definitely a heavyweight in the world of pharmaceuticals or drug manufacture. Their goals, simply put, the number one goal was to meet the regulations so that from the UK and Europe they could ship to the US and the rest of the world. Integrating with their current business systems, Oracle applications, the third point down there, was another goal. And the last point on the left, a flexible yet highly featured labeling solution. Talking of the challenges in terms of the timescales, which were very, very short, the requirement was to deliver in less than 3 months, and as it happened, the Christmas holidays fell in the middle as well. And as we were talking before, full life cycle documentation following the GAMP-B model, and as we were talking before, meeting Part 11 requirements. The solution for this customer, Cardinal Health, was using Prisym Medica, the world's only purpose-developed solution to meet the FDA regulations. In their case, a client-server application with client licenses dotted around several locations, interfacing with a central server location, then with backup licenses as well. Also interfacing with their pre-existing Oracle 11i installation to their business data. This was using a core product module from Prisym called the Prisym Medica Data Watch. Again, we delivered full lifecycle documentation and attended site for the installation, including carrying out and assisting the customer with IQ, OQ, PQ, as well as full training to ensure they were entirely up to speed and fully trained to move forwards with the solution. As an extra part of the total offering, giving maintenance cover moving onwards. And now I have the pleasure of handing over to Ray Collier-Suzuki.
Thank you, Andy, for a great overview of 21 CFR Part 11. Clearly, the goal of 21 CFR Part 11 is to allow medical device and life science organizations the use of modern technology for electronic records and signatures in place of paper to help organizations like yours to reduce costs in managing and documenting their entire labeling lifecycle, from routing and approval workflow, version control and comparison, audit trails, and reports. Although the use of an electronic record or signature is a voluntary FDA requirement, when compared to using manual processes such as paper records and handwritten signatures, once a validated and secure 21 CFR Part 11 compliant solution is deployed, the benefits of using electronic records and signatures are significant, and will also make it much easier to gather, filter, and present for both internal and FDA audits. So what does a 21 CFR Part 11 compliant labeling environment look like? Well, it looks like this. Throughout the entire labeling life cycle, there are steps that need to be taken and processes to manage and enforce. From the moment a label designer releases a label to be reviewed by perhaps your quality, marketing, or regulatory groups, you want to capture who released the label, what is the version of that label, and when it was released for approval. To illustrate this further, let's take this one step at a time. Okay, so let's start with security. 21 CFR Part 11 compliance begins with ensuring security controls throughout your labeling operations by granting each user specific authorized permissions, a unique username, and requiring the user to approve completed activities with their credentials such as username and password. You've taken the first step towards creating, documenting, and timestamping an audit trail by capturing relevant information such as who accessed your labeling systems, what jobs or actions did they perform, did they release a new label or create a new version of an existing label, did they modify any data that will be printed on your labels, did they approve or reject a label, did they print a label, did they run or export a report. When you support your entire labeling operations with a validated, closed-loop solution, you're able to define and enforce your business policies across your labeling operations and limit the access to your labeling system to only authorized individuals. To help you conceptualize how this can be accomplished, here are some views of how Prisym Medica meets 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. Ideally, any system you have in place should be powerful and allow complete control, but should also be flexible and simple to use. Prisym Medica's permissions interface is a very good example of this. Also, within an extensive permission system, you should expect to have control of a significant number of options to enforce your SOPs. In this example, over 100 are available to an administrator. Once permissions are set for a user, access to any key stage of the process will always need a username and password, providing you with confidence that their activities are secure and logged. Once your security controls are in place, 21 CFR Part 11 compliance begins within your labeling lifecycle, right at the design stage. So, let's look at this step. Because you've created usernames and passwords to meet electronic signature requirements, incorporating 21 CFR Part 11 compliance into your label design process enables you to control who has the permission to create a new label, designate who has the ability to make changes to a label, thus creating a new version of that label, capture the release information of that label into the review and approval cycles, such as who designed the label, who released the label for review, when was this label released for review, and what's the name and version of the label. Additionally, to be Part 11 compliant, it requires that you accurately log and track and can report on all versions of your labels which were either released for approval or approved for production use, to ensure your logs and reports will stand up to an FDA audit. To achieve this, it's recommended to use a closed system, which will automatically track and enforce this level of version control and revision control for your label designs. You want to be sure that every version of every label ever designed within the system is not only available to authorized users, but can also be used to satisfy regulatory audit requirements. Just as an example, to emphasize the need for a closed system at every stage, this design stage example shows a secure, automatically version-controlled label format linked to secure, approved, fixed, and variable data. It's also important to consider how a system manages and controls access and visibility of your ever-growing numbers of label formats. Rather than having a solution that uses basic directories for you to wade through, it's recommended that a solution with a more advanced interface be used, such as this one from Medica, which provides users with the ability to see a label's status, version number, thumbnail of the layout, and the key relevant information that you need at a glance. The next stop along the path to 21 CFR Part 11 compliance is approval, and capturing all the necessary electronic signatures and electronic records, in this case, your labels. Again, an electronic record is defined as, quote, any combination of items such as text, graphics, data, pictorial, or other information in digital form that is created, modified, maintained, archived, retrieved, or distributed by a computer system, unquote. There are many benefits in moving away from the traditional paper-based workflow process in achieving 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. Your benefits may include reducing cycle times to move a label through the review process, visibility into the progress or status of a label in the review cycle, flexibility in managing complex routing paths through the individuals or reviewer groups such as quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and marketing, and effectively controlling which labels and versions of your labels are released for production print on the manufacturing floor or in the distribution centers. As in the design stage, by implementing security controls into the label lifecycle, you can manage who has the permission to review, approve, or reject a label. You can manage which labels a reviewer can approve. For example, if you have a designer who also has review and approval permissions, you don't want them being able to review and approve their own label. Log and report on which version of what label was routed for approval. Enforce and track the defined sequence of steps for a label through the approval cycle. Be certain that unauthorized changes to your labels cannot be made. And with the security controls in place, you can enforce electronic signatures, comment requirements when a reviewer approves or rejects the label. And as with the designers, all these actions are user, date, and time-stamped for tracking and reporting capabilities. Full audit trail of all review and approval activities are maintained within the secure audit log. To achieve this, a validated closed-loop system must be used in order to ensure 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. So, in meeting both the FDA and your own demands, it's best to implement a labeling solution which can meet and mirror your business requirements and operational processes while ensuring FDA compliance. And knowing that everyone is watching their budgets, in addition to achieving control and compliance, streamlining these operations and reducing the demand for paper helps to reduce time and costs in the approval cycle. And also, when called upon to produce a report or complete an audit, executing these can just be a click or two away. Here are a few example screens to help you visualize screens that represent what you should be looking for in your ideal 21 CFR Part 11 compliant solution. This screen shows jobs being created for review. Here we see multiple jobs in various stages of approval that can be reviewed. How the right system can organize these jobs into folders, and how you should be able to have easy access to view details of any formats being reviewed. Moving along through the cycle takes us to data. I think we can all agree that managing all the product data, symbols, graphics, and languages can be an enormous struggle. By incorporating CFR Part 11 compliance into your standard operating procedures of managing your product data, you can control who can add or change data in your data tables, who can approve these additions or changes, capture and log by who and when these changes were executed, and over time create a historical, reportable audit log of all additions, version changes, and activities along these lines. To achieve this, you want to choose a solution which will help you manage the editing and creation of records in a database table. This will ensure that by the time the label is printed, the label design and the data will have been subjected to individual approval processes, which have been audited and tracked and stored in a secure audit log. Again, to achieve this, you need to use a closed system, which will automatically track and enforces this level of version control and revision control for your data records. Here's an example of the type of secure data solution that would help you. This screenshot shows Medica's data editor system, which provides a secure version-controlled environment for the management of data, either directly or to complement an existing database solution. Now, it's the moment of truth, printing your labels. If the FDA performs an audit, they may want to approve exactly what was printed at a particular time. If you are CFR Part 11 compliant, then this will be much easier exercise to perform. Again, with the right security controls in place, you can manage your label printing operators and operations. You can control who can print what, and then capture in your audit trail who printed what and when. To further comply with CFR Part 11, you must be able to produce the necessary electronic documentation as to exactly what was printed. Additionally, it's critical to be able to not only capture all this information, but be able to prove that the information is authentic. So, it's vital to use a validated closed-loop labeling system with a secure audit log that will capture all labeling lifecycle activities, including the printing of your labels. In addition to the who and when of your label printing, elements that you'll need to capture with every instance of print are which label format is being used, what's the version number used for each print, and any and all other data used, such as the manufacturing date, expiry date, and images. Because there are going to be times and reasons for reprinting a carbon copy of a printed label, whether it be for your own necessity, for example, reprinting a label that has been damaged or requires repack, or due to an FDA audit, it is necessary to be able to reprint a label in its original state. Again, being CFR Part 11 compliant enables you to capture and report on who printed what, whether during an original production print or reprint, and allow you to prove what was printed to the FDA. To accomplish this, you'll want to be certain that your labeling system offers the capability that whenever a label is printed, all design information, version information, and any variables that were used are saved securely in your system and can be accessed by appropriate users to perform a label reprint at any time, whether you are reprinting a label from last week or 5 years ago. As an example, Medica provides the tools to achieve this too, which can demonstrate this step to you. This screen shows the reprint facility with flexible configuration and search facilities. Here's an example of a grid populated with matching print runs. And as we drill down further in this example, we choose label numbers 1, 2, and 3 for reprint. Before printing anything, the user will be asked to re-enter their credentials and provide a reason for their action. To control this process even further, reason codes can be controlled by the system's configuration file as standard. Now, to be able to prove to the FDA that your electronic records of what was to be printed actually was printed, it's important to reconcile all your print jobs. Reconciling allows you to create a true audit trail of all your print and reprint activities in the detail that we have already discussed, as well as enable you to account for any necessary label scrapping or of damaged or destroyed labels. Here we have a couple of example screens of how this can be achieved. In Medica, the Reconcile feature is similar in design and concept to the reprint facility, but with additional tools to help users accurately record reconciliation logs. On this screen, the user is asked for their username, password, and reason code, always ensuring that every key event in the whole process is logged securely. Now, along these steps through the labeling lifecycle, we've spoken about the capturing of information that's required by the FDA to be 21 CFR Part 11 compliant. It's best practice to have a secure audit log within your label system. The audit log is a central repository of every action that occurs within the system, where all information is stored and secured so that you can filter, sort, drill down, retrieve, export, and present any information related to your product labeling that will stand up to an FDA audit. For example, when a print job is sent, the audit log captures the user information by means of the user's electronic signature when executing a print job, the label name, label version, printer, and all the product-specific variables sent to the printer. When you are 21 CFR Part 11 compliant, your audit log contains a complete and accurate history of the system, which means that you are able to produce appropriate reports for regulatory purposes and are also able to perform reprints and reconciles for print jobs without having to revert to paper processes. Here's an example of what you should expect to see from a typical audit log. In this case, to the right of the screen, more detailed event-specific information is previewed to help your internal or FDA auditor to navigate through the logs before interrogating any information further for finer details. So, with that, this closes the loop on what to look for in a 21 CFR Part 11 compliant labeling environment. Clearly, there are many things to take into account when creating a closed-loop system. So this has been a very high-level overview, which we hope that you found useful. If you want to learn more, why not connect with us? Prisym ID are certainly well placed to support you, work in partnership with you, and guide you through the challenges that are faced when creating the ideal compliance solution that fits your business. We've been solving local and business problems for customers in the life sciences sector for over 25 years now, earning the most extensive 21 CFR Part 11 focused experience and knowledge base in the worldwide label lifecycle management sector. Can we help or support you too? Some of our clients who have taken that step with us are listed here, helping them to achieve compliance with confidence. So, let me hand the webinar back to Claire for the questions and answers. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Andy. Please bear with us while we just collate some of the questions that have come in during the presentation. If you have any additional questions that you would like to submit to Andy and Ray, please do so now using the question tool on screen. We will try and answer as many of your questions as possible, but we'll be providing written responses to all the questions during the webinar afterwards too. Thanks. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll now be answering some of your questions. The first one that has come in is, what are the average timelines for a validated project?
Okay, let me take that one. There's not really a typical project, as there are always unique features to a project. So really ranges between a short or off-the-shelf software project can take down to a matter of a couple of months. However, a long project in terms of complexity or rollout can take 12 months or even longer, depending on both how well scoped the requirements are and also how complex or how diverse the rollout is.
Okay, thanks. Second one coming in is, do you work outside of the US?
I'll answer that if that's okay, Claire. Yes, we most certainly do. From our offices in the US, UK and Germany, we've delivered solutions right across the world, including the implementations in Japan, Australia, South America, and across the Middle East, amongst other places.
Okay. Another one come in. You said draft VSR in a previous answer. Can you explain this, please?
Yep, another one for me. Draft validation summary report. As Prisym are only responsible for test documents run in the Prisym offices, and generally the first completion of the IQ/OQ/PQ, there are potentially other areas where the client would want to add detail, so subsequent runs of IQ/OQ/PQ or additional work in terms of testing interfaces and other aspects outside of Prisym directly. So Prisym pass a report, a validation summary report in draft form, which has all of the details up to that point included. So everything under the control of Prisym is included, but then the customer can choose to add to it if applicable, and then it becomes their document that is deemed a final validation summary report that then gets used for auditors, FDA or otherwise.
We've got one here. What common pitfalls do you come across?
Probably another one for me, Ray, rather than for you. I'd say the main pitfalls are before the project starts, a lack of a detailed URS, or actually during the project scope creep. Also unrealistic timescales or unrealistic expectations on those timescales. My opinion is it's always far more important to focus on delivering the right product to the right quality rather than delivering to a sometimes arbitrary deadline. Also a detailed, clear project plan and also a rollout plan is very important, ensuring the details of the site rollouts are clearly defined nice and early in the process. Also very important to have a robust change control system as changes do crop up in projects, and far more important to be able to manage and control that well rather than hope that there aren't any changes. And lastly, I'd say a strong and very importantly involved leadership team. That's essential to ensure that the project remains focused and also has the resources to deliver the solution.
We've got one more here. You seem to have talked about medical devices for most of the session. Do you supply other industry sectors within the validated arena?
Happy to answer that. Thanks, Claire. Yes, we do. We're specialised in providing validated solutions into the life sciences sector for over 25 years now. So we also supply into the pharmaceutical or drug manufacturers, the clinical trial sector, and also animal drug manufacturers as well.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll wrap up there, but as mentioned earlier, we will be providing a written response to all delegates of the questions we've received. We do hope you've enjoyed the presentation and found it informative. For further inquiries, please visit our website www.prisymid.com or do email us at the above address. Thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.